lot to talk about. We did one of these not too long ago, and it wasn't very active. But now, as everyone probably heard, we have Tropical Storm Beryl, which was once a Category 5 major hurricane, as it went south of the Dominican Republic. You can see here we have the previous track plotted. That's the Dominican Republic. Went south of here, was a Category 5 before, and then went through kind of parts of Jamaica as a 4, but now it's in the Yucatan and it's only a tropical storm. But as you can see here, this general cone path is going to be what we're watching next with Beryl. So, welcome to our Tracking the Tropics. We definitely have a lot to talk about here, joined by Pack. Of course, we're going to have all of the latest information with it here. And I think the first thing we're going to start off with is we have our new 7 p.m. advisory in. So it is just about to enter, and Pac might be able to say, I'm 90% sure this is all over the Gulf of Mexico waters now. Um, as it continues, but currently about 2130 north, or 21.3 north rather, 89.7 west, moving at about 15 miles per hour. Through its entire life, it really hasn't gone below 10 miles an hour, and we think it's not going to stall out with a lot of these other factors we're going to go over. Pressure is up to 994, which is about a tropical storm range, and winds are generally at about 16 miles per hour, and we think it holds this way until it reaches the Texas corridor, but after that, we really don't know what else is going to really happen, and there's a lot of things that could occur, as there's a wide cone path you see all the way into parts of Louisiana to maybe South Texas here. So that's the general update here as of 7 p.m. We have a lot of other stuff to go over, but Pack can kind of go over some of the factors that we have going into this, but I want to actually show some live current winds with Hurricane Beryl. We have some offshore wind sites. Really, there's not a whole lot we can query now, but once it gets into the North Gulf of Mexico, we are really able to get a lot more data. But at the moment, this is going to be the next one it's going into, this marine sensor. But overall, looking from a broad picture, it's generally at about those tropical storm winds here, and really it should hold that way for the next little bit, as we do have some dry air kind of entrained with it, which that is the next thing I want to show. We don't have this in our scene preset here, but I think it'd be nice to really show that this is Beryl itself, and Pack, this was actually forecasted, but now it is dealing with a little bit of dry air, and you can kind of explain how, with it already being disorganized and a bit of dry air and shear, how that's going to kind of impact it for a little bit.
Yeah, so for all those who are just joining in, welcome to the stream. My name is Packy, as you see. We're covering Beryl here, and what Mason was talking about here is we've got this dry air to the west that is coming in from this feature that's over there. And since this storm just went over land, it's going to be very weak. Little core of high moisture, that really fast winds, that the stronger hurricanes, that's all very weak now because of, and so because of that, this dry air is going to be penetrated inside of that core. And when it gets inside that core, these hurricanes really love more. They don't like being sheared apart. And so getting that dry air to get, which is what we're kind of seeing right now, especially at its weakest stage, just off the Yucatan Peninsula. Uh, that dry air is going to really disrupt the core, and we'll probably start to see intensification in 12 to 18 hours, not for a little bit. Right now, it's going to look not very menacing, but I do have a fear that that may change.
Definitely. Uh, but in terms of this, another factor is storm fuel, which we are going to have a lot of. You can see really ahead of this, some of our sensors are showing upper 80s into the 90s along the coast. But generally, what it's in now is about around 85. That is very warm, but it's not those 90-degree temperatures, which is very, very warm. But nonetheless, it's going to take a little bit. We have some dry air we got to work through. We have some shear we have to work through. But once Beryl can really get its act back together, we think it could go back to a possible major hurricane. That is a reasonable worst case scenario with this. Uh, but there's a lot of other factors with this here. So I showed you the advisory before. This is what the Hurricane Center is thinking. We hold a tropical storm. There's going to be dry air issues. There's going to be shear issues. But as it pushes on through, once we get to about the time frame of, they're calling this about into, I think this is Monday, right, Pack? Around Monday to Sunday. We're going to
Monday
be
PM, yeah.
looking, yeah, into Monday. They have it as a category one. We're talking about this, really what I would be expecting at the 10 p.m. update is that this cone is shifted more this direction. And it would include the center being around here. Because at the moment, Beryl is already outside of the cone. It is having that northern momentum. And we will show you exactly why this is happening here in a second. But it's not actually following the cone all too much. And I think it's going to remain about here as it pushes off towards that general area, but maybe calling a Category 2, Category 3 at landfall is not out of the realm of possibilities. It's just how fast Beryl can recover and if we can get that rapid intensification near that landfall point. That is all very possible, but there's a lot of other factors that really have to come into play before we can even think about this. So, that's kind of one of the things here. Again, if anyone has any questions before we get into the main part of this, be sure to leave them below and we will go over. I want to look at the satellite view here. Again, with it becoming nighttime, it's going to be hard to really get a full view of Beryl. But what I can do is put on the kind of infrared or actual satellite view of Beryl. And this is its low kind of center right about there as it was pushing on through. And there's a few things we can dissect from this image here. First of all, its upper level kind of outflow is still not all that bad. You have your winds pushing up this direction, winds kind of pushing from the south. So in that regards, it's not doing all that bad. But I think at the moment it's having a little bit of dry air entrainment right about there punching into it. So that might weaken it, but by all means, it's not very weak. It's still a tropical storm, and we don't think it's going to get so deteriorated that it won't be able to do much. And then infrared's also showing that we really still have that robust center, but it's not having a lot of convection around it like we had before, which is good, but could be better. And I kind of want to go for view before we go into everything about Beryl, our current satellite and radar across the region. You can see this is a frontal system actually moving into parts of Louisiana. That's bringing some rain, but what I also want to show is our upper level jet stream because this will have a play on our weather. We currently have a high pressure that's been in control for a few days now. That's something we know. But we also have a few troughs, and that's basically, you can call them weather makers. That's going to push into the high pressure, and the question is, how much can it weaken it? Is it just a little bit? Is it kind of a little bit more? And you can think of it as a 1-2 punch. What I'm going to do is actually put on our 500 millibar. This is basically the middle of the atmosphere. This is our first wave pushing in. That's going to slowly weaken that high pressure. And then we have another one near Montana that's going to work in too. This is going to steer Beryl up. And you can actually see Beryl right here. It's going to kind of steer it towards these general directions. And we don't know. There's a lot of model consensus now. But it's really just which ones are correct and which ones are not. So I don't see a lot of questions. If people have questions, be sure to link them in the chat. But Pack, if you have anything before we go into the full forecast that you want to kind of go over, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot here. You covered a good amount. But just to reiterate, yeah, if you guys have questions, please ask us. We're more than happy to give you the best answer that we can give for whatever location you live in, whether it's going to impact, it's going to be headed into the Texas area, maybe a little bit of Louisiana. The whole Gulf Coast is going to see some form of tides, waves, but the the real hurricane atmospheric um, bad weather, I guess, is going to be probably in the Western Gulf rather than like Florida or Alabama and Mississippi.
Yeah, Florida's definitely, I think you guys are good, but if I'm in Mississippi or Alabama, I would watch for maybe a little bit of water inundation. I wouldn't be surprised to see a coastal flood advisory issued and some rip current statements. But really, your main surge is going to be into parts of western Louisiana and almost all of Texas, pretty much. So let's get started here. We have a few kind of things prepared for you guys here. The first image that I kind of want to go over here is of the radar on the Yucatan Peninsula. So essentially, rather, what this is showing is kind of this is as Beryl kind of made landfall here. You can see a robust eye wall. That's your outer bands, and it kind of just went all across. But you can notice as it worked onto there, it kind of got a little more deteriorated. It wasn't all that strong. It was a lot more broad, rather, and it just really had a pack of a punch there. I don't know, Pack, if you've seen any reports out of the Yucatan, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got a fair amount of damage and surge from this, as it was kind of small, but its impacts definitely were kind of felt there. So that is what they were feeling on the Yucatan, and that's going to continue. This was the recon, essentially. The National Hurricane Center, they fly planes into the storm, and this gathers us valuable data. So essentially, all of these are wind barbs. They throw out little sensors, you could call them, into the storm, and this provides us data. So you can see this is about tropical storm strength up to about here, hurricane, and then in the middle, it measured 9 and to give you a general idea, it's an inverse relationship. When you lower your pressure, your winds are going to increase. And as you can see here, we're increasing our pressure, so our winds are going to weaken. It goes both ways, and this was measured at about 998. That puts it at about tropical storm force, and I really don't see anything else changing with this anytime soon. Pack, you might know, but it seems like they're heading back. If there's any other things you can mention about this graphic, that'd be useful. But I think that's kind of the main part that people need to, know about it.
Yeah, I mean, since this point that you've brought up here, they've done another center fix, which means they've flown through the core of the storm, the eye of the storm. There's not really much of an eye now, but really where that center is, and you can see kind of where the wind barbs shift. They placed another point of maximum or minimum pressure there, and it was the exact same. So there hasn't really been any fluctuations yet in intensity. It's about the same, and it's holding steady, and I expect it to for the next 12 to 18 hours or so.
Yeah, definitely. So that's going to be the main part we're kind of watching here. But that's what we were seeing with this here. So here are the current alerts. With the 4 p.m. advisory at the main ones about 4 p.m., next one's going to be 10 p.m. They issued some coastal alerts. So these are our current storm surge alerts. You can see surge could get well into Corpus Christi here. This is just a watch, but it goes all the way down to kind of the border of Mexico and Texas, all the way up to Lake Jackson. And I don't want people to get center fixated on this. We could definitely see storm surge alerts all the way up to Vermilion Bay, all the way down to south of Houston with this. Because remember, if our storm makes landfall here, you're not going to have much surge in Corpus, for example, as much as you will up towards these areas here. It pushes surge kind of outwards. So that's unfortunately what we're going to be looking at. And of course, they've issued their alerts for this. With storm surge comes our hurricane watches. That extends from pretty much Mexico all the way up to north of Corpus there. But also, like I said before, do not get center fixated on this. I expect this cone to move a little bit in this direction, and watches may extend all the way south of Vermilion Parish in Louisiana. You could see them go. So, lots of factors at play with this here. We're expecting this to change, but at the moment, South Texas to mainly northern South Texas, you could say, be on alert for this to change, and it could, definitely bring its own issues with that there.
One
With
thing,
a, oh, what do you got, Pike?
yeah, one thing I wanted to mention really quick. The coastline here is shaped such that, it's more north-south in here, and if the storms kind of parallel that coast for a while, most likely finds that weakness in the ridge, and when it parallels the coast, if it ends up 50 miles west, big difference in what sort of impacts are going to be felt in, say, the core, and also the final intensity when landfall, because a further north track, a little further to the east of where it's projected to go now, which is very possible, by the way, it'll not only end up way further north on the, but it'll have more time over water for which to intensify even further. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. Certainty on landfall here is very high. But it looks like more and more that the that we were thinking a few days is becoming less likely.
Definitely. And real quick, Pack, it seems like you're having a little bit of issues with your mic again. Not sure what would be causing it, but if you could try to maybe figure out, I don't know if it's something we can fix, but we're gonna continue there. And yeah, like Pack was saying before, this surge, depending on where it comes in, will be greater or higher. So again, if you're in these northern areas that's not on the map, still prepare for surge. Same for the hurricane watches as well. So, with a tropical system comes rainfall. So, this is kind of from the Weather Prediction Center, the professionals over there kind of giving us an idea of rainfall. Generally, this area here, I'm going to kind of draw a line. Again, if this moves more this direction, more rainfall for these areas. If it moves maybe this more south, which I don't think it will, less rainfall for these areas. But at the moment, the way it kind of holds, we're seeing about maybe half an inch to 2.5 inches for parts of NOLA to maybe southern Mississippi. But as you cross into southwest Louisiana, the kind of widespread totals, I'd say widespread 4 to 5 inches to isolated totals to 7 to maybe even 10 plus inches there. Of course, as Beryl gets closer, we're gonna see if this kind of moves more towards Louisiana or moves more towards Houston, which would be the likely point. Again, we have a lot of other models here that have done good before that are also agreeing of north of Corpus, which would bring its own threats, of course. But nonetheless, lots of rainfall with this, and with that, we also have flood alerts out here. Day 4, chance of excessive rainfall. Have that for most of South Texas into Louisiana, and by day 5, that extends widespread. And understand that this might even be upgraded to a moderate or high risk of excessive rainfall. I wouldn't rule that out. We gotta get closer to know, but understand rainfall will be a big threat with this. So here's a kind of graphic that looks very complex here, and I want to kind of explain it to everyone because it's easy to understand why this is happening. Why are we getting this tropical system to really impact maybe parts of Louisiana or Texas? Well, it all has to do with our upper level system. So you kind of have a lot going on here, and I went back to kind of explain this a little bit here in greater detail. It's going to be a little bit scientific, but I think understanding this will give everyone a better idea of what's in store for
All right. Hopefully these microphone issues don't persist here. I'm gonna do my best with that. But so essentially what we've got drawn on the screen here is you've got the H representing high pressure, the low is a low pressure, and the H is in the mid levels of the atmosphere. Um, and that um, I believe that arrow is kind of drawn the opposite way, but that is carrying this storm up to the north. That H, it represents the edge of the high pressure here, and that's going to be following or going to enable this storm to move right to the left of it and catch into that area of higher flow associated with that trough with the little dotted or the dashed cyan lines and then that orange. And when that is able to squeeze through there, that low to the left side is going to kind of back away to the west. And because right now that low is actually imparting. But when this moves up into kind of that alcove there between Brownsville, Texas, and say Lake Charles, Louisiana, that part of the Gulf is going to be extremely ripe for intensification because that low that's imparting shear right now back to the west, and that area of stronger winds way up above our heads over, say, if you're in Dallas, Texas, up into Little Rock, Arkansas, the winds way up there are screaming out of the west, and that is going to enable a lot of air that's above to be evacuated away from there. And so not only is it steering it to the north, but it's also providing a way for air to be taken away from the storm, and then the storm naturally has to replace that void um, with air from below. So you're going to get that rising motion. Thunderstorms are going to go up right near the center of the storm, and that helps to deepen the cyclone at a rather quick pace. And personally, I'm expecting that to occur shortly before landfall. We'll have to see how soon it'll occur, and that'll make a big difference in the intensity forecast. But either way, this is going to be heading north, likely not to go into Mexico. Should probably go somewhere between Brownsville and
So yeah, so that's the kind of general idea. This is more of the meteorological perspective of what we look at, but this is just showing you, and then we're going to show you easier stuff to kind of understand. Since this is very complex, but basically upper level system you can think of, and these are acting as little corridors to push Beryl into this direction. So we don't think Florida is going to get impacted. We don't think uh, Southern Alabama or Gulfport, Mississippi are going to be impacted. But once you get into those areas, that's where we're going to have issues. Now, with that comes who could get tropical storm force winds, and this is at the current time. I need you all to kind of understand here that this can and will change. If Beryl decides to go more this direction, you can bet you that these are going to be shifted more this direction here. But as it stands, as of this advisory, this is who we think will get what. So into Louisiana, those areas, 5 to 10% chance. I would prepare for 30 to 40% chance. I know it's pretty high, but this will and can move. You got to prepare for the worst here. And Houston, for example, you guys are only in 10%, but I wouldn't be surprised by tomorrow you guys are in 60 to 70% chances here. But it's all going to depend if this decides to take more of a turn here, which is possible, or if it decides to stay more near Brownsville in Mexico, which is becoming a little more unlikely. Again, these changes will have a major impact as we go on throughout time. But yes, Louisiana, all of Louisiana needs to be prepared for this because, as you guys know very clearly here, all it takes is a little bit of surge, and then all of our southern parishes are inundated with water. It really doesn't take a whole lot, and we're going to definitely be tracking that very closely as surge is a very big deal for all areas along the Gulf Coast, but definitely more than others. So that's going to be something while we're watching here. If we're talking about the most likely time for us to start to see these tropical storm winds, again, this is going to continually change with time, but at the moment, we're thinking about so you guys have a few days to kind of prepare here, which is very nice, but by Sunday PM, everyone should kind of be where they're expecting to be for this storm. Again, once we get to about Saturday, Pack, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but I think by Saturday at 8 p.m., all of our watches and warnings are going to be issued here. So people should really know what they're going to do. And then by Sunday at 8 p.m., that's when we're in place by a maybe Monday early morning landfall. So kind of what we have here. That's what we're watching. In terms of surge, now, me and Pack kind of talked about this here. This is showing a very small area, guys. This could extend all the way into, at most, eastern Louisiana. So, what we're kind of watching with this here is maybe 3 to 5. If this gets stronger, which we think it will, maximum, what would you say, Pack? Maybe 10 feet, kind of, depending on strength?
Yeah, probably up to 10 feet.
And it's just very hard to note the exact areas with this. So definitely stay tuned. We're gonna have a video out at some point with that, but definitely be aware of this storm surge impacts. And then this is another rainfall graphic, just kind of showing a general idea. Widespread, again, this is gonna change with the track. If we're talking more like this, Louisiana gets more of the impacts here. If it's more this direction here, more of these areas are gonna see the impacts. It's really the meat and potatoes are in where Beryl decides to go. And we just don't fully know that yet. Now, this is one solution here. This is the American GFS model. What it has is a landfalling storm around Monday, dissipating by Tuesday. Now, Beryl, in my opinion, the GFS has this too far south, I think. I think with a lot of our shorter range guidance, this is more north of Corpus into those areas. But nonetheless, this is just one possible model outcome here that needs to be noted. Again, this is the 18Z midday guidance. By this afternoon or later tonight, we might have different guidance, but this is what this one is kind of holding. And then this here is the GFS total rainfall. So you can see we move on through. Sunday, we're getting those outer bands into Monday, and kind of isolated totals. I wouldn't be surprised to see of up to about 7 to 10 inches in spots, but widespread 2 to 3 inches. And I'm not gonna lie, if South Texas and all of Louisiana sees 2 to 1 inches in the span of about 1 day or so, not all at once, this is very beneficial rain. Um, and we could actually use it at the Lafayette Regional Airport. We're actually 2 inches below where we should be for this time of the year. But again, that's a different story if you're right under the track and you're getting 7 inches in 2 hours. So really riding the fine line. And again, we're not going to know who's going to get the 12 inches that this model is showing until we get to the exact day when this is moving on through. And again, that's where another thing we got to find out where Beryl rather is going to go here. So that's again one outcome. Here's the European model. So European has it going through there. This is valid Monday, and it takes kind of a Houston type of landfall here. What this would do is give Houston most of the impacts and surge into Louisiana, but really the wind field is a little bit small here that I've been noticing. And again, this is following our graph model. This is following a lot of our other hurricane models. So I'm really starting to think that if I'm talking about a likely area, something like this, possibly, with these areas also needing to be kind of watched for a potential type of landfall, if I had to guess here. But we'll see what the Hurricane Center decides to do. But at the moment, this is just one possible outcome here. And
I
then
do
this
want
is
to
the
add,
rainfall. Oh, what's up?
yeah, I do want to add, when we're showing you these models, where they're going, they're obviously, and they're just showing specific landfall. And the thing about hurricanes is that they have impacts that extend well beyond where the landfall of the eye is, or the low level center. Yeah, maybe the most severe impact could be there. But if you're talking about hurricane, a major you can have hurricane or tropical storm, especially on the eastern side, because on the eastern side you've got these winds that are going to be coming away from the bottom of the Gulf where the storm is. It's going to be pushing water all the way up, potentially into Louisiana, where are very low lying, and they don't deal well with onshore flow and surge. And so uh, when you get this flow that's coming in, it's going to really pile up the water here. And it's good to note that rain's going to extend well beyond, even wind is going to extend well beyond, and especially the coastal hazards on the eastern side.
Definitely. And one prime example with this, and I want to kind of give a Louisiana example here for a little bit. If we had, for example, a system that went just like this, you would get tremendous surge into, for instance, Vermilion Bay, or into parts of these areas here in southeastern Louisiana, southern Terrebonne, those areas. But the same can be said for Texas. It all depends how Beryl is angled. If it's like this, Galveston Bay is going to get a lot of surge. So it's really going to be dependent, yes, to small scale impacts, but really, if it sets up on a certain bay, you're going to get a lot of surge in it. And for example, Beryl, with the impacts extending very far out, Beryl was down here, and we still had a lot of surge and coastal flood alerts for Louisiana. So it can definitely extend well beyond. We don't want people getting caught up in the cone here, but that's just one possible solution. And here's the rainfall from the European. This is strictly if it makes landfall near Houston. Do we know if it's going to do this? No, but it is one possible outcome. That would give generally 2 to 3 inches of much needed rain, not all at once, but 6 or so inches near the path. And this is the national blend of models. This is blending a bunch of outputs together, taking into account multiple possibilities, giving widespread 5 to 3 inches or so, we could say there. Uh, and here are these spaghetti plots. We don't want to get caught up in just one solution. And I'm going to say right now, I'm not a big fan of this kind of solution here. I think personally, by 0Z or late PM guidance, it's going to be more of this direction here, uh, towards this area. I think it's surging a little less from there because of that low pressure we were talking about before, and kind of your high pressure here strengthening. So I really think something like this would be where I'm watching at this current moment. But nonetheless, that's what a lot of our, lot rather of our models are showing. And then this is the GEFS. It's basically multiple runs of the American model showing us different outcomes, and that definitely has a lot of different. You gotta keep up and watch here. So that's also one thing to note. And this is showing the European and GEFS ensembles again. 18Z toting about as I expected here, but again, that's something that we're keeping a close eye on. And then for our final kind of one here, I decided to put on our 18Z, our midday guidance. This is pulling in uh, the European model, the American K model, and one to two others. And the general consensus is, sure, there's some Mexico outliers, but I really think something like this is what we really have to watch. And a lot of members are agreeing with that here, which is what this graphic is of course, showing, which is something to note there. So, just thought I'd kind of mention that in this forecast here. And this is the last one, trust me, but I just think it's good to show every possible outcome with this system, and most are showing there. Again, this could be back and forth, but we're starting to get into that moderate confidence here, and our next slide really shows that we're getting to the hours of 60 hours. If you mark it there, we're about moderate confidence. This is average spread, but kind of post that this could still move a very lot here. So just something to kind of note with this. And I think that's all we have here. Pack, if there's any certain ones you want to specifically go over, I think that's really all I have for this part.
Nope. I think that is kind of what we're looking at here for all of the potential solutions. Again, some of these are, they're all potentials, not exactly where it's going to be. And some of them, they could all be even wrong. That cone of uncertainty kind of covers most of those solutions, and that cone is wrong to 1/3 of the time. So that's a pretty decent margin of error, and it's something to keep in mind as we watch this storm pass right over the Gulf.
Definitely. And of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll be sure to go over those. More than likely. So let's see here. What I want to kind of do, um, if everyone would want to kind of see this, I think since we don't have many questions and we went over the current advisory, I want to kind of go over a few models to kind of see what our 18Z guidance is holding here in consensus. But again, this is our latest advisory on Beryl. Lots of rain over for Louisiana. This is a them for any of our folks out there. Moving on through, I don't think this is going to be severe at all. This is not associated with Beryl. I know a lot of people have questions on that. No, this not from Beryl. Beryl is a lot more towards the south here. This is just a little bit of rain. But Pack, one thing I want to kind of notice with here is that any additional rainfall we hear might kind of bite us in the butt with Beryl. So that's kind of a weighing our odds. We don't want a lot of rain because with Beryl we're gonna get a lot more rain with there. So just kind of a lot of things that we're looking at with this here.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting scenario because, typically you'd want these rains, especially if you're in any sort of drought here. And these storms that are kind of moving through the area that could be impacted now, they're dropping some rain, and that's usually good rain, but it's going to get added on in a severe way, likely, especially within some sort of narrow corridor, wherever this tends to go. It's going to get added on severely with quite a bit more rainfall, and that is likely to cause flash flooding in a lot of places, no matter how dry it's been, especially because actually dry ground um, can kind of prevent, if it's coming down heavy and quick, can kind of prevent water from being soaked into the ground really well. So it'll kind of just run off, go to the lowest lying area wherever it can go. And I know in Louisiana that's probably pretty near the coast, and many areas there are pretty low lying. So um, in these areas, it's this rain can be looked at in one viewpoint as being good, but I'd say overall, um, it's probably not a good scenario for the people that live here. All right. Seems like Mason's not around at the moment. So Calvin, you
Oh, it
you
looks like
live
I
in
was
Houston,
muted.
and the forecast changes make you nervous. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. They are starting to tick more toward Houston, but here's the thing, right? When this starts to, if it looks like it's going to be coming into the Houston Galveston area, um, we're going to probably go over here in a couple minutes what kind of preparedness actions you should be taking, especially if you're in these hurricane watches now and probably up the coast a little bit later as well. And so, just to briefly go over it really quick here, um, you know, you the stores are going to be probably pretty packed, full of people trying to get their bread and water and all that. And it's important to it's important to do that and to, have any, especially if you live close to the coast where there could be any sort of saltwater flooding from the oceans. It's good to have sandbags ready, um, and it's good to have, a kit full of things that you may need if your power does go out, which is in some areas here probably pretty likely. So keep that in mind. But we are going to go over kind of the preparedness actions we should take as we're coming toward the latter half of this stream.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go and get that ready here, because there is definitely a lot you should do here. So the first thing I kind of want to show, and this is something that from what I know, most coastal states uh, have. I'm not sure if all do, but it's a know your plan site here. And basically, what it does is just kind of shows you what zone you're in, etc., etc. Let's see if I can pull this up real quick. So just bear with me. But this is a Pretty good graphic to kind of show here. Let's see if this is going to work. It is going to work, luckily. So let's do this here. So this is basically for a lot of things. Basically, and I'm going to show here in a second. Houston has one, Louisiana has one, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. All have these graphics here, but essentially, you gotta know your zone. If you're near a coastal area, you've been through these before, but it's just knowing and understanding what evacuation zone you're in, what to prepare for, how high surge could get, etc., etc. Uh, have some sort of kit, even if it's just a little bag or something. Have preparedness supplies for 3 to 5 days in advance. You're going to be without power, so having those stuff can be very essential for a lot of areas. That's the first thing with this here. And then also, I recommend a handheld NOAA weather radio. I can actually pull this up real quick here, but essentially, Midland. And if you give me a second here, these are the ones I recommend, especially for if you're in a hurricane zone. Again, we're not really sponsored by Midland or anything, but these are very good because it's a NOAA weather radio station. It's off of radio towers, and most of the time, these really don't go down for a lot of things. And it's a hand crank, so you have a flashlight right there. You can get all weather radio and actually AM and FM stations. Uh, and you have a bunch of other features with this. Again, we're not sponsored or anything by them, but I think this is a very good thing to have because you can also charge your phone with it. And it's a hand crank. You don't need power to charge this up. And you're also getting the latest information with it. So that's one thing I also kind of recommend here. And also make a plan. Know if you're going to evacuate and what to do, and also just follow from local officials there. That is another very good thing to do. And let's see if there's any other questions in the chat real quick. If there is not, I'm gonna go over some of the sites here. And let me see here. Bear with me real quick, guys. Just trying to find this. Because I know each state has their know their zone site there, but I don't think I can find it here. But this is kind of the main thing that we want everyone to kind of know and understand. Basically, just your plan and all that stuff there. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions, be sure to put them in the chat. We will go over all of them with due time. But let's see, make sure we're on here and transition over. But this is again our latest advisory on Tropical Storm Beryl. Last information on it, it was at 990 millibars, moving at about west northwest at 15 miles per hour. And I talked about it during the entire thing, and I think the main issue with this is that if you look very closely at the center of circulation, Beryl is north of the cone. Um, and the issue with this is that with it being north, you're going to have more north impacts. And that's why I think, and Pac, I want to kind of hear your idea on this. Well, I think we kind of agree on this that this cone is too far south. I really think.
Yeah, well, okay. So it's a little bit confusing if you guys are looking at the screen, you see all that convection to the north, and then the actual track is much further to the south. We do have a lot of shear right now. It's been going down a little bit, but we've had a lot of shear, kind of pushing most of the heavy weather to the north side, and that makes it, really look like this storm is much further north than it actually is. But this has tracked further north than expected. But most of what you're seeing, as far as where the main area of where those rotating clouds are, you see a couple new convective blowups there on the northwest side. That's kind of spinning around a center of spin that's located primarily in the middle levels of the atmosphere. And the low levels are a little bit displaced to the south and east, or west rather. And I'd say it's maybe probably on the north side of that cone. So I do expect a shift in the next, National Hurricane Center update. But there is a good bit of shear going on, and that shift is really
And I know this map
allowing.
has its issues, but this is kind of showing your upper level trough here with its shear, and then that's where, of course, Beryl is at the moment.
Yeah, so we've got some of that southerly flow that's pushing all those storms to the north. All the bad weather, all the wind, the rain, and that is making it look a little lopsided right now, which is why it's not a very strong storm, uh, especially considering it had just came off of land as well. But um, the two centers, the mid-level center and the low-level center, which are, two areas of spin that are kind of located in different parts of the atmosphere, they're not really aligned. When you have them stacked like this, um, you can get very much better a better sort of thunderstorm development from that, and the storm can more effectively deepen and become stronger. So we're not seeing that right now. There is quite a bit of tilt here, but it looks to be probably that should kind of start to stop here pretty soon. They should start to kind of come together within the next day or so.
Definitely. And one thing I want to show, this is going to be very technical to the average person here, but I want to see if we have any passes from our satellites. And yeah, I think we actually have a lot here. Because I kind of want to see how Beryl is looking at the moment. And I know land is going to have some interaction, but this is 1930Z. Think, yeah, that's around kind of noon if my memory serving me correct. Currently 1Z now, so it's a little bit old, but as Pac was kind of saying, it's definitely feeling the shear, but you can kind of see your center of circulation mixed to there, and I want to see if I can pull up our higher bands here. Let's do this. You can kind of see it a little bit there, but it's definitely dealing with some shear, but we think it can overcome that with due time here. So let's go ahead and do this real quick. And it should switch over back to our graphics. But yeah, I think that's all we have here at the moment. If there's no other questions, uh, and of course, you can put them in the chat here. We will go over them. Seems like we have a little more people joining here, but nonetheless, we are tracking Beryl. Latest information, still a tropical storm, but we do expect that some changes in the track could occur here. I'm going to go over our graphic one more time here for anyone new joining in for the latest on Beryl. You can tropical storm conditions expected by landfall. It shows category 1. I would prepare for a category 2 or maybe even 3 as we go on without time. And we don't say this to scare anyone, but that's just what the environment supports here. You have your disorganized convection, but nonetheless, as this pushing on through into about Houston, maybe Louisiana, those areas, it's really going into those areas that we have to watch. And yeah, I know a lot of people are talking about Harvey. The good news is, I know a lot of people, rightfully so, are scared because Harvey did a lot of damage. It stalled and dumped a lot of rain over the area, but luckily, with our upper level trough over here, we are not, I will repeat, we are not expecting this to stall out. It's still going to dump some rain, but this is going to be nowhere near did. But those wind impacts could still be kind of strong here. But nonetheless, pushes on through. Maybe category 2 to 3. They're forecasting a 1. I think by our 10 p.m. update, this has moved a good bit to the east here. I'm going to go back to our graphics real quick because we actually have a lot to go over on that part for all of our new people joining here. I'm going to start over our graphics real quick. Bear with me, and there we go. So this was radar as it crossed the Yucatan Peninsula. You right there, it had its eye wall. It was a very strong hurricane, hit there as a category 2 landfall, and kind of disorganized. It's that shear, it's the dry air, it's the land interaction. Tropical systems really don't like that, so it kind of disorganized. But that's not the end of Beryl here. This is what our Hurricane Hunter recon gathered in pack. If you could check and make sure, I don't think there's any more planes in here at the moment, but this is the latest information we had. It's down to 990 millibars, and all you really have to know about millibars is that it's inverse relationship. As you increase pressure, your winds are going to go down. As we lower pressure, your winds increase. And luckily, we're increasing pressure, so we're lowering our wind speeds. And that's only for now. You can see it's all of these right here are drop signs. They're basically dropping this from the plane and it's going through the atmosphere and giving us wind data. And all of these are little barbs, and essentially it's showing us that this is a weakening storm, but that could change with time here. In terms of alerts for all of our Texas folks here, we do have new data. Storm surge alerts for parts of Corpus down to the Mexico Texas border, all the way up to near Lake Jackson. That is where we are expecting possible storm surge. Now, I don't want people to get hyper gridlocked into where this is at the moment, because ultimately this could go all the way up to Vermilion Bay in Louisiana and possibly give more surge inundation. It's all about where this track decides to go. And at the moment, unfortunately, we don't 100% know that. But with a storm surge watch, we do have hurricane watches also posted. While you guys in Houston are not included in this, I wouldn't be surprised by the 10 p.m. update to see you guys now in a hurricane watch with this current data that we have, unfortunately. But nonetheless, Corpus down to kind of Brownsville to Lake Jackson, that is where we have a hurricane watch in effect. And with this, we were talking about Harvey before. I want to kind of get rid of all the rumors that might be going around. This will not stall like Harvey. We're not going to get 2 to 3 feet of rain, but it is going to be, an efficient rainfall producer. With a tropical system, you're going to have a lot of rainfall, moist storms. You need a very moist profile for these. And, like every tropical system, we're not going to be able to tell you the direct rainfall impacts just yet. But nonetheless, once you go to New Orleans, kind of the South Mississippi area, about 1 to 2 inches, maybe generally. As we go over to eastern Texas, that is 5 to 7 inches widespread. I can't tell you who's going to exactly 10 inches, but nonetheless, it is there, and this is going to trend with time. And this, from the Weather Prediction Center, the experts over there, showing about 15 inches or so isolated. So, unfortunately, that's going to be one thing there. With that, we do have our excessive rainfall outlook placed. This is a day 4 risk, a slight chance that we get excessive rainfall, and that moves into day 5. Now, while this isn't a moderate or high risk, it is very possible that as this turns and moves, there's a lot of moving factors, that this either increases or decreases, and I think it might actually increase. So here's a graphic I made here. Understand that this arrow is wrong. It's supposed to be like this. So for this, I'm just going to move it just like that there. But nonetheless, we have a trough. These are basically our weather makers. And what this is going to do is one of two things. The first wave is going to kind of make our high pressure a little bit more weak, right? And then we're going to have another one which is going to take Beryl more towards the north. So those are the two things at play here. With this high pressure being a little more stronger or weaker, this is going to guide it more this direction. We have the upper level trough, which is going to guide it more this direction, which really gives us our Louisiana to Houston to Lake Jackson areas for a impact, but with so many different areas at play here and so many different upper environmental factors that we're looking at to give you guys a forecast. so much can change, or so little can change, that can make a big impact. And at the moment, these are all the factors that we have, and that is in our tropical impacts here. Now, at the moment, with tropical storm force wind, again, this is heavily dependent on a south option. If it's more towards this area, you better bet you're going to get some tropical storm force winds. But if this rides that track that I showed you guys before, you're seeing more of Houston included into that. So my personal kind of opinion on this is that parts of Louisiana, I give you guys a third or a 20 to rather 30% chance, and then into Houston with our current guidance, about 40 to maybe 60% chance there, and it's decreasing with our more south options there, which is good. Now, if you're in the path, what is the most likely times that we are going to get impacted? So you can see Friday 8 p.m. That is exactly where it's at here at the moment. We go into Saturday. I think by Saturday at 8 p.m. or so, we're getting hurricane warnings issued, warnings, tropical storm warnings issued, yada yada. We just don't have that at the moment because we're not too close to that time frame. But nonetheless, there, I think we're looking at a Sunday at 8 p.m. to Monday at 8 a.m. type landfall. Again, if this slows down, if it moves a little bit, if it turns to the right, if it turns to the left, this is all going to change our times. But just a general idea, the most likely time, not the this is the exact time it's going to make landfall time. So just keep that in mind. With the current surge being forecasted 2 to 4 feet as you get to Sargent to the mouth of the Rio Grande. So a lot of factors that play. This isn't including the areas I think that should have a storm surge map into Houston and Louisiana, but as this moves, as it increases, this map is also going to change course, and this is just showing our widespread rainfall up to about 8 inches or so. So with this comes our weather models. So as you can see, this is the GFS American model. It takes it up rather to the kind of middle Texas area, making a Corpus Christi landfall. Some model trends show this more over to the Houston area, but that is just one deterministic solution. And this here is the with it there. As you can see, we continue throughout time. And as we get into about Monday or so, this is taking its track at face value, giving us about 5 to 12 inches in areas, generally 2 to 3 inches with that. So it's good that we're getting the rain, but we don't want too much at once. This is the 18Z European. This one has more of a trek that I think me and Pack agree with here, of kind of north of Corpus to near the Houston area. Again, if this moves, impacts are going to change, or if it, towards the right, towards the left, impacts are going to change with it. But nonetheless, that is something that we're watching here. Rainfall would suit follow this, but if we blend all of these together with the models, you're seeing pretty much 5 to 7 inches widespread across the area. Okay, now into the model part of this. This is midday guidance. Most of it's holding it near Corpus. I don't entirely buy that. I think areas of Houston should be on alert, and that's certainly what our GEFS members are showing. This is just showing it in a different view there. A lot of more to the north, a lot of GFS is more to the south. It's just really in the middle of that who would get this, and nonetheless, this really shows very well our model spread, and this is something over the next few days we're going to have to be watching here. And this is just another graphic showing that in its entirety, that we're kind of confident in this area, but all of this could again move with time. And our last graphic here is showing our model confidence with Beryl. So, Pack, if you don't have anything, I think where we call it here, we've been going for about an hour. We gave out all the information that we have, luckily, and if it does not have any other questions, I think that's all we got here.
I think it's worth mentioning. We did get a new model suite for the zero Z guidance. This is just the absolute newest data that we have. And again,
And what site are you looking on that on real quick? I'll pull it up for you here.
tropical tidbits.
Okay.
Yeah, so as you'll see here in a moment, much of these spaghetti plots, which do move all the time, it doesn't really show the extent of where the storm could go, but it shows where the most likely area is, and that does continue to shift to the north, more towards the Houston area. Again, we're talking here mostly Matagordo, I think I said that right, Bay.
Around Corpus to Lake Jackson, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of just between the Houston and Corpus Christi area. And once again, it has shifted a little bit to the right, to the
And what I'm
east.
gonna do, this is what we had at 12Z the morning, and this is what we had at 18Z midday, and you can definitely see, look at that trend. I mean, this is what we had this morning. We were thinking South Texas, and now it's starting to move. And Pack, I'm pretty sure this is because of that upper level trough. It's really starting to notice that a good bit.
Yeah, it's probably mostly actually due to in my opinion, the storm organization itself. I mentioned before that you have these two centers of circulation, the area of greatest rotation within the storm. You have the one in the mid levels, the one in the low levels. We're waiting for them to kind of come together in a line. They had done that before when this was actually a Category 5. It was breaking records earlier this week, but. They've now disaligned as a result of the shear and land interaction, and so that low level center is further south of the mid level one. And generally, what tends to occur is the mid level one will tug on the low level one, the one really far down, and then that one in the mid levels, as that's kind of they're both moving kind of northeast or northwest rather, but then at the same time that low level one gets tugged toward the mid level one, and so. Essentially, the storm itself, it's like tugging on itself and moving itself north. That's helping to change the initial launching point of where this storm is. The track forecast remains the same. The idea behind the high pressure steering it around into that trough that we mentioned earlier, but where this storm ends up being consolidated, it makes a big difference in where it makes a landfall, especially because it will probably be moving parallel to the Texas coast for some time. Whether that's 50 miles inland or 50 miles offshore, will make a big difference in not only where the biggest impacts are felt, but what the timing is on those impacts. Further offshore, it's going to hit land a little bit later. And since that's later, it's extra time for more time over water. And that's going to help it maybe even intensify even more. And I'm worried for that latter potential. It may try to sneak a little more over water. We've seen Beryl do a lot of things that we didn't expect, and now it seems to be trending towards something that pretty much no model had shown, even as little as 2 days ago. And so now we're looking at a pretty significant scenario for anywhere between Corpus Christi up to Houston, and even some places south and north of there, with some of the impacts as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we gave out the most, or the best information rather that I think. But what we're gonna do here is, we're going to start to end the stream here. We want to thank you guys for watching this update, and of course, we are going to be doing a landfall stream once that time comes. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. Pack here is going to have a new video coming up here in the next day or two, I believe. So be
Yep.
sure to watch that, as that will have all of the newest information that we are watching and what he is thinking, of course. So, with all of that being said, we're going to leave it there. Thank you guys for watching.